Dean Skelos and Sheldon Silver, just the latest examples when it comes to corruption in New York State. It's been going on for decade after decade. In fact, there is such a rich history of corruption, if you will, that a new museum is planned in Albany to tell that very story. Well, a short time ago, we spoke with Bruce Reuter. He is the founder of the Museum of Political Corruption. Let's get into the genesis of it. You come from the world of music.
I do.
Up in St. Rose, up in Albany. What made the connection between music and the fine arts and the fine art of corruption, I guess, that has defined, unfortunately, the Capital District for too long?
Well, it's an interesting connection. I am a music professor at the College of St. Rose, and I'm also a composer, and I think this project evolved from the same inspiration that a lot of my music does, and that is that I want to both inform an audience and entertain an audience at the same time. And when I was speaking to a local politician in Albany, I was saying, what do we have that distinguishes our community? Then it struck me, we have corruption. That's what we're known for.
And in fact, Teddy Roosevelt, who you had read up on, was an inspiration, a trust buster, but also a corruption buster, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we plan to feature him in our museum in the Hall of Honor. We will have a Hall of Honor, and we'll probably also have either a Hall of Shame or a Hall of Hubris. We haven't quite gotten the name yet, but we want to make sure that we honor those people who have fought against political corruption.
You might need a few halls on the Hall of Shame front.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea when you launched the project, again with the target date of 2019 to open its doors, that it would be such a dominant theme this past year, where you have obviously the Speaker of the Assembly and also Senate Majority Leader going down ongoing probes right now, in addition to other folks who've also had to leave in shame? Did you have any idea this idea would have been as timely as it's become?
No, I had no crystal ball into this, but it doesn't surprise me either. It shouldn't surprise any of us. You know, corruption is such a part of the way things are done in Albany, but it's nothing new. I mean, you could go way back through the colonial era to the present and trace the history of corruption, and that's what we intend to do in this museum. And it's a fascinating story, and it's a story that needs to be told with lessons that need to be learned.
And for anyone out there who thinks, oh, this is some new phenomenon, you don't know the story of Tammany Hall, and you have a great story that will obviously will be featured in the museum. Nellie Bly. Tell folks who don't know Nellie Bly, the investigative journalist, what was able to be turned up, and the anecdote of name your price.
Wonderful, wonderful story of this female journalist in the late 1800s, 1888. To be precise, at the Kenmore Hotel in Albany, which still exists. We can take people on a tour if they want. Nellie Bly was a journalist in New York City who heard that you could buy the New York State Legislature to pass or kill any bill that you wanted to. So she went undercover and she took the train up to Albany, and she met with a Mr. Ed Phelps, who was called the king of the lobbyists back then. And they discussed, and she randomly picked out a bill, and she said to him, "Can you kill this bill?" And he took out a sheet of paper and he said, I can buy this legislator, this legislator, this legislator. Yes, I can do it for you for the price of $1,000 plus my fee of $250. So she said, okay, do it. And lo and behold, the bill was killed. They get together back in New York City a few weeks later, and he expects payment. And she says to him, she says, how were you able to do it so cheaply? And he said, well, you know, I sometimes bundle a lot of these together, and then I can do it in bulk. As such. And so she excused herself, and he thought she was getting his money, but she really went back to her paper. I believe she was working for the New York World at the time, and she typed up her entire account, and the rest is history.
You know, one of the things that's been interesting, Bruce, is the Supreme Court obviously ruled on McDonald and the former Virginia governor who was convicted, was overturned. And in many ways, one could read the rationale for that if you can't define the hard quid pro quo and have, in effect, a smoking gun, that's part of doing business in Albany. Do you think somebody, when they walk through the doors and then when they walk out, will have a clearer understanding what a public official can or can't do in the eye of the public trust, both the spirit and the letter of the law?
I hope so. That's what our museum is going to be all about. It's going to be a resource for the public, but it's going to be a resource for our lawmakers as well. Look, there are some things you can legislate and some rules you can create, and others you can't. It's a cultural sort of a thing. And you can play by the rules But the rules aren't always written down. They're not always stated, but you have to know what is ethical and what is not ethical, and where there is a breach of trust with the public. There are ethical lines that you should not cross if you are a lawmaker, and I think they understand that. And if they don't understand that, that's what our museum will try to reinforce.
You've actually had some interesting contributors. Zephyr Teachout, who was a guest here recently, who's a candidate for Congress herself. She and others, they've written checks, including lawmakers, right?
Well, she's on our advisory board. We have a wonderful team of experts, of political experts and museum experts that are behind this project. It's really great. Yes, I have had some donations from some of our assembly members as well, and I encourage their participation.
I don't think Shelley Silver, right?
No, we haven't asked him yet, but he may wind up being a docent at the museum someday as community service. But we want to involve our lawmakers. We don't want to demonize them. That's not what this museum is about. This museum is also trying to create a space where citizens and lawmakers can come together, find some spirit of trust to find the solutions necessary to create more ethical governance in Albany.
Well, that raises the perversity of some folks, whether they're at the Illinois State House, with Chicago politics, obviously, New York, name your place here, some of the bigger cities. They said, no, we're actually the most corrupt. Is there a perverse embrace here of having that title in New York?
Oh, you've seen the headlines as well as I do. New York is #1 in corruption, as though
With a
we
bullet,
can
yeah.
take some sort of pride in it. I don't know about that. I have received contacts from people in Chicago who want a museum of their own, and I say, no, we're going to build it first, and then we'll franchise. I recall there was even a headline out in New Mexico when they heard about the idea for this museum, big headline saying, why didn't we think of this first? So look, the idea seems to resonate, and that's fantastic. And if we can use Albany and use this Museum of Corruption as a model, and if it helps our state and our community, then wonderful. Let's have it help other cities and other communities as well.
So let's give a state of affairs here. We mentioned 2019 as the target date. Do we have the site location, and how are we doing on the fundraising?
Right. Fundraising is going. Look, it's going to take a number of different sources to build this museum. We have a general site. We do want it downtown, probably somewhere along Pearl Street or Broadway, just a few blocks from the state capitol. But again, a lot is going to be dependent on funding.
Well, fingers crossed here. It's a great idea, and unfortunately, too many headlines confirm probably the need for it. Bruce, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
And coming up next, we'll take a look at some local headlines. Please stay with us.